It was nice talking to you yesterday. Also, you work on human emotions and you had a background career in the fashion industry. You discarded that and moved into understanding human emotions and how that works, the mental health areas. So tell us about your background, what you were doing in the past and what made the changes and what you're doing now.
I think that for me, I've always been an emotional kid. And when I mean emotional, I don't mean like crying or like very like vibrant emotions, but just really feeling really deeply. Going through my own personal life, just as any adolescent, I went through a lot of things. Everyone goes through different degrees of them, but I went through some sexual abuse, some extreme bullying in my life. And a lot of that was very alienating. It made me feel like I went inside more because there were certain people that I thought I was safe around that I didn't feel like I was safe around anymore. So I found safety within myself. But within myself, that meant that I was very contained and I had to process a lot of things on my own because I didn't know where safety was. I felt protected in many situations, but maybe not safe to really express myself in the ways that I was feeling things because I was still trying to make sense of it. Like as a kid, you experience a lot of things, but you don't have the language for it, right? Mm-hmm. So growing up, like I said, I went through my own personal experiences of just growing up in the world that people go through. Everyone goes through things in different degrees. Eventually, I kind of got into this space where I really wanted to learn how to connect with people. And not by not being who I was, but figuring out ways that I understood who they were deeper.
Right.
And so through that process, like I said, I was extremely bullied and I was made to feel alienated in a lot of different aspects of my childhood. So I really wanted to connect with people and I wanted to be authentic in that space as well. Even still as a little kid, I knew that I was unique and different. But I'm like, how do I do this? Because I'm balancing this space of learning about myself, not trying to lose myself, but also trying to connect with other people, right? And so now that I can process it with the language, it's a lot clearer. But at that point in time, I was just trying to figure things out, right? So over the course of high school, for example, I slowly started making friends by understanding people in a different way, understanding how to approach people, their energetic spaces, their emotional resonance when they were talking or how they were behaving. It was a very sensitive space for me because I was trying to be as sensitive as I could to the information that I was receiving.
Right.
And so that's really kind of what ended up happening, long story short of my youth. But what ended up happening was I did start learning more about myself and I started honoring the unique spaces of myself, even though other people weren't seeing some of them. I was already leaning in towards who I was a lot more in the latter part of my teens. So when I got out of high school, a lot of people that I know got jobs and went to university or whatever the case was. And for me, I already knew that that wasn't my path. Like I was a smart kid, but school and studying wasn't my thing. My parents are entrepreneurs, and so I was already exposed to the idea of building your own life on your own terms and figuring it out. Mm-hmm. So I told my parents I didn't want to go to school, and they were like, okay, but you can't just sit around and figure it out.
Okay.
So either get a job, do something, but you can't just kind of just hang about, which is fair enough, right? It makes a lot of sense.
Structured life that they were leading.
Yeah, they're like, we need you to see, you need to progressively be moving towards something, whether it's a career, whether it's a job, a business, or studying, but like something you need to like take what you've gone and like keep going, right? My parents are ambitious people, and so they didn't put pressure on me to be ambitious, but they were also being like, come on, like, which was fine. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, just sit around and do nothing. So I ended up getting a job at something called a Foot Locker. Well, Athlete's World, people know it as a Foot Locker.
Okay, yeah.
And back in that time is when they started selling clothing, and I was really into clothing since I was a little kid. It was a way for me to just kind of feel good in the expression of who I was. It wasn't anything extravagant or elaborate, but like, you can ask my mom, like I was very picky at a very young age before I even understood about identity or whatever. I kind of leaned into things that like made me feel a certain way.
Okay.
So I ended up getting a job there, and then people started talking about what we didn't have that they wanted, what they liked, and I started kind of getting a sense of what was going on in the industry, in the market. And so I went to my parents one day, and I was like, hey, listen, I was like, I want to open up a shop. I want to explain to you why I want to do it, how I want to do it, where I'm going to do it, how it's going to be run, the marketing, the whole thing. This was like 25 years ago, so like around the year 2000. I come from a lot of wealth that lost everything.
Okay.
So I had to understand what that dynamic was in society, but ultimately when I went to my parents and spoke to them, it wasn't just like, sure, here you go. I had to really sit with them like they were investors and really show them what I wanted to do. And they lent me their last 30,000. They had A1 credit, which was great because at that time we had 30-day terms. And then I got into the fashion industry through a business lens, and it really opened up so much because it allowed me to connect with my uniqueness more. Because now when I was like ahead of the trends or up in fashion and knew what was going on,
Right.
this was a way for me to start navigating who I was. It wasn't necessarily a fashion conversation, it was an expression conversation for me. And so I kind of lean into that. The fashion industry is wonderful in that capacity because, you know, our emotions are so tied to our identity, and our identity is so tied to our emotions. And so being able to be in an industry that praised that was like, let's see how authentic you are. Not just how unique and how flagrant and how much you can peacock, but like, who are you? Through the way you express yourself, through your clothing and through how you show up. And so that was a wonderful experience for me and what really opened up my life in so many ways, because now I started connecting with other people who were expressing themselves uniquely and in their own way through their clothing. Also on the other side, people that were afraid to express themselves through their clothing, right? And then conversations about identity, about emotions, about ego, about gender, about society, about religion, about all these things started showing up. And I realized that, you know, it was such a wonderful place for me to be because it exposed me to so many dynamics within the emotional space and the identity space. So I did that for about 20 years. And then I was the opening keynote speaker at the Fashion Innovation Summit. Thought leaders from all over the world in the industry were there, from London, from Milan, from Paris, really from all over in all the major cities. And I opened up the conference with my talk. It was fashion as a catalyst for change. So the difference between clothing and fashion. And I went into everything, fashion through the ages and the expression behind it. And yeah.
Okay.
And then I got off that stage and I sat down and I listened to everybody else talk that day. And I realized that I didn't care anymore. I was done. 20 years in the industry, I did some wonderful things. I worked on so many aspects of the industry at a really high level, and I was sitting front rows at fashion weeks, I was modeling, I was producing fashion campaigns, I was creative directing. It was like all this beautiful thing. It was like a life by design.
Right.
And then I sat down and I was, after my talk, and I was just like, I don't care about any of this anymore. Okay, what does that mean? Because this is a very interesting awareness that I'm having here sitting. And that's where really everything kind of changed for me. Because, you know, you hear a lot of people going through quote unquote midlife crisis, right? Call it what you will. I was about 40 years old at the time. But usually it's because they work a job that they didn't like and they were like, I'm done, I want to do something else. Or they're in a relationship because of their parents and then they realized that it was the wrong person. But I lived a wonderful life, man. I lived it by design. I made my mistakes, but I had some wonderful triumphs. It was confusing for me because I was like, well, if I live by design, and I've always been a very mindful, very present person, I was like, how do I feel like this now? Because it all served me until it didn't. And so that was really challenging for me. That year, there was a lot going on in my life. I was just getting out of an 8.5-year marriage, a relationship with the person I was with. We were married for about 5.5 years or so, together for about 8 or so. A lot of things were changing in my life. I was trying to make choices and they were all falling apart, and I couldn't trust my intuition anymore. And my emotional faculties were just kind of at their limits. My nervous system was shot. And I just felt like a sloth trying to break down a brick wall. I was like, no matter what I did, I just couldn't figure it out. Things weren't going my way. Things that were supposed to happen all of a sudden randomly didn't. And I was like, I'm done. And so I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and I was like, this was around November.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, you know, I think I'm just gonna disappear for a little while, maybe move with my parents, save some money, you know, move into their second bedroom, save some money, take care of myself for a few months, and then maybe February I'll kind of see what my life is looking like, because everything just feels like kind of a disaster right now. Yeah. And he's like, can I be honest with you? And I was like, of course, you know, one of my best friends at the time. And he was like, the idea of you moving in with your parents while you save some money and figure out your life sounds depressing as fuck. He's like, I know you, get on a plane and don't stop. Don't worry about the money, don't worry how you're gonna do it, how long it's gonna take, just go. He's like, you're the best when you're inspired and in your own flow. And that taught me a really valuable lesson, and that was that most people offer advice, but they don't include the context of the person they're speaking with. So for everybody else, that would have made a lot of sense. It would have been like, yeah, like most people would be like, that's a great idea. Move in with your parents, save some money, take care of yourself, nurture, figure out what you're gonna do. But he was like, that's not you. And he saw me in a really beautiful way that I kind of forgot about. A big aspect of who I was, where I felt like I needed to start hiding from who I was, not double down on who I was. And so that really opened up the whole story from there. But that's kind of like how I got to really exploring my identity, my emotions, ego, like you were saying, the bigger conversation.
You started exploring a very large area of reality, which is human emotions, that includes ego, different types of expressions and feelings that people get, or you don't have any structure, book, or any convention for it. We don't even have a convention. For example, programming, we have conventions from everything. Like you just go and look for the libraries where you get that. Some people think that human mind and our reality has some sort of similarity of objects and devices. But here, we understand that input-output occurs. There are some sort of I/O. We do something, get something. Looks like a computer from an engineer's perspective, but we don't have any reference library, no reference point. So you started exploring those relationships, and you found certain elements that are helping a lot of people. One of the things you were saying that in relationships, people, if they're quiet, they don't communicate. How do the other party process this kind of contexts? So tell me about it. So being quiet in a relationship, they don't want to hurt you, but they are not being able to express. So one thing I heard that you talked about, and I want to know more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that a lot of people think that communication is the biggest problem in a relationship. And although in a lot of cases that's true, sometimes we have to look deeper.
Okay.
And what's the emotion? What's happening underneath the surface that's really, impacting the communication in a way that's not serving the relationship. And what I found is that communication usually isn't the issue. It's usually trust.
Okay.
Like they don't feel safe to talk to you. What are you going to think? Maybe they love you and they don't want you to get triggered. Maybe they've changed, and that's a really hard conversation to have because that might mean that this relationship has now come to an end. Maybe you're going to shame them or blame them because now you're in a place where you don't have the same beliefs and you're going to feel attacked, right? Like there's a lot of causes to why communication breaks down or why it never even kind of flourishes to begin with. And it's really interesting because with the work that I do with emotions, I hear all the time like, oh, that's so great. Like so many men need emotional intelligence. But to be honest, emotions aren't a gender conversation. Emotions are a human conversation. Exactly. And there is truth in that men have a harder time expressing or connecting with their emotions. They tend to disassociate. But on the other side of the spectrum, a lot of women are overrun by their emotions and they have a hard time expressing them in a healthy way because it's so much expression all at once. They feel so passionate about it, but neither one of them leads to a healthy expression of the emotion through context and conversation. So when we talk about emotional intelligence, well, what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the ability to process and understand your emotions as information. So you can step back, you can understand the information that it's providing to be a better person and to be able to connect with other people in healthier ways so that you can understand what they're processing as well. Once we get into that space, we start looking at a lot of different conversations that tie in with emotion, so identity.
I have a cutoff question here.
Yeah.
So huge in terms of understanding the other party, where they are standing here, what intellectual location or emotional location they are at the moment, trying to articulate yourself from that point. For example, I had to wait until you finish. I had to understand that where the finish line is coming before I go here, instead of just straight into the point. And this is okay, it's a basic level, but if you go to higher level, especially into men-to-women relationships, it's huge. For example, a friend of mine in England, he is 35 years old and he has problem in the dating thing. And I was telling him some things that I understand a little bit, but he was going back to the one point that he can't say that what is the right time, what's the right point. I mean the gauging point. He does not have the control over the lever of human interactions. So I think, do you have any tip or a reflection method that people can practice or understand, like how do I start understanding the other party, not just me? Okay, it's important that I understand myself, what is going on, am I agitated or I'm normalized? Okay, it's important, but are you agitated or are you normal, or is it your dead end or is it your red zone or red line? How do I get those, and how somebody who does not understand it can have a practice or learn something about it?
So the question is specifically asking me
specifically something that people can practice to understand other parties' emotional or intellectual red lines or green lines, let's say.
I think it comes down to communication, right? I mean, and also understanding language.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. The language that we use is generally understood through the lens of our own comprehension,
Yes.
based on our own experience, right? So I think that it's really important when you're trying to understand somebody to ask them what they mean by certain things and by certain words, right? We can't expect to understand everybody point blank without the context of what they're talking about, right? So if somebody's talking to me, for example, about healing, it's a big conversation there, and a lot of people are like, I'm healing, I'm doing this, and I'm healing. My first question when people have this conversation is, can you define how you understand the word healing, right? Like define healing for me. Not as in like, I know the answer, but like, I want to know your answer. Because we might be having a different conversation based on how I understand the term healing versus you. So once I'm able to understand that and ask more questions, not assume, well, I have more context. You see what I mean? And so that way it's like, okay, well now we're, when people say like, oh, we're talking different languages.
Right.
Generally, a lot of times you are.
Yeah.
Because you have definitions that are different. Like emotional triggers to words that are different. So I'll give you another example. I had this in one of my relationships and I had to be very mindful of it. Because I would use words like always and never. You always do this, you never do that. And the other person was really triggered by that. Always, I never, like, come on.
What do they even mean?
Because especially when you're talking to somebody who is trying to move past things or trying to grow, it's a really hard thing to understand. And so some people might not say that specifically, that they got triggered by it, but they might get triggered by certain words that you use because of how they associate them
Those words
in their life, right? So a really good way to start also, if you're having a conversation with someone and it's not really going anywhere, it's kind of going in circles, then take a moment and just breathe. Maybe the conversation has gotten to the end of it at that moment, and then come back to the person that you're associating with and just say, listen, we obviously have an issue with our communication. What I want to start understanding is, what words am I using that are triggering you? And then they'll say always and never. Okay, I didn't even know that because it doesn't trigger me, right? And then it's like
the same label on those.
Yeah. But then there's also like, okay, thank you. So can I understand why? And then they'll talk about it, because then it'll give you more reference to other situations. Because they might talk to you about an old partner or about their parents or about an insecurity they have. And now you can use that as context to be like, okay, well, now this is actually helping me understand you much clearer. So when we move forward into a conversation, if it comes out randomly, I can say, I'm really sorry. I need to be more aware. I know that you don't enjoy how, let me rephrase that. Catching yourself so they know like, okay, like they're aware of this. You know what I mean? That's the best way.
That's exactly what the other person wants. Or if I'm on the other side on the table, then we just want the other person understands your positions. Not being understood is the biggest concern in people's mind, that I'm not being understood. My language, as I said, even if we speak the same language, but the interpretation of the languages could be drastically different between people.
Sure. I mean, the dynamic of conversation is really interesting. So another great activity if you're having a really hard time, like understanding each other, right? Like, oh, you don't understand me, or oh, you're not listening, right?
Yeah. Often that comes up.
It comes up. So a good activity to use, a good practice to use there is, if somebody says something to you and they're being passionate about it, or they're being very expressive, or they want you to understand something and it triggers you, or you want to just be sure that you understand the context before you react or process, you can say, okay, so thank you for your feedback, or I appreciate what you're saying. Let me repeat to you what I heard. Because oftentimes what we heard is not actually how they intended it to come out, or they didn't intend you to take it in that way, right? So you can have an example like two friends talking. Somebody's like, hey, I would really like you to hang out this weekend. I'd really like to spend some time with you. And I'm like, honestly, I'm just too busy this weekend, like maybe another time. And then they get really aggravated and upset. You can be like, okay, I think something came unclear. Like, what did you hear me say? And they'll be like, I heard that you don't care about me and you don't want to spend time with me. Yeah. And they're like, okay, What I meant was I have a few deadlines this weekend that I need to be very mindful of and hold some boundaries for, but I also want to make time for you. So maybe let's set an actual date for the next time that we're going to hang out, as opposed to leaving in the air because I want you to know that I do care, but I have some things I really need to take care of, right? Now, it'll take time to get to that kind of stage, don't get me wrong, but it's those steps that create the awareness, because now you're processing emotions as language because you're looking at them through a lens of information, not through a lens of reactions or triggers or assumptions. And that's a relationship conversation, but that's probably what I would say.
And when someone practices this type of follow-ups, I think their aura changes. The person becomes slightly different, and other person can trust them a little bit more, because people can see through what you practice and who you are. The ones that are instantly reactive, this person, and the ones who are not going to be instantly reactive, rather they're going to follow up and try to understand the context, will be, their aura will be different, or their presence will be different.
Absolutely. Yeah, it takes time to build trust, you know.
Okay, so you spoke about one very interesting, a little controversial concept, which is self-care and self-neglect. And you think they're kind of identical. Like, that kind of blew my mind as well. Like, how can that be identical? And what do you find similarity between self-care and self-neglect, both on the same line?
Yeah, so they're not identical, but there's definitely a fine line between them, right? So sometimes we think that what we're doing is self-care, but it's actually self-neglect. So for example, setting boundaries is healthy, right? It's self-care to say, okay, there's certain people in my life that I might need to make some space from, or I might need to speak to them about certain things to create a space of boundaries where it's more healthy of a relationship. Self-neglect would be, fuck everybody, I'm gonna hide out of my room, I'm not gonna talk to anybody, and I'm just gonna be alone.
Yeah.
Both of them create space, but one of them is isolating and the other one is boundaries.
Right.
Right? So it's just that kind of conversation, right? Self-care is like, I'm going to spend some time on my own this weekend, or I'm gonna go to a spa and I'm gonna like take care of myself and like just enjoy, right? Self-neglect would be overindulging and going beyond what you actually need to avoid the things that you want to be doing or you have to do, right? So if I got something that I need to do, to be like, I'm just gonna go to the spa and just like do this because I need to take care of myself, you just wanna be mindful of that, right? Are you trying to mask what you need to do as terms of self-care, or are you actually taking care of yourself to be better in that situation or that circumstance or show up in the way that you want? So I think that we need to be very mindful of it, right?
It's like you can put a test or question. Does it make you better or more evolve you, or does it not evolve you? Is something like that?
I mean, sometimes self-care isn't an evolution thing, you know? Sometimes self-care is just taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, that's okay, right?
So
like having a glass of wine and watching your favorite show, self-care. Drinking 3 bottles of wine in one night and then just sending off crazy texts and doing whatever, self-neglect.
Right.
Right? You're actually neglecting what you need to be mindful of. So there's these excuses that we make, right? The validation spaces. And I'm not here to say what's self-neglect and what's self-care. I'm not judging anybody. But I think it's important to be aware of, like, you know, to ask ourselves, it's like, so what am I doing now? Is it actually self-care, or am I neglecting something and I'm masking care so I don't have to face this thing or do this thing or like have this conversation?
Subtle. It's very subtle.
That's why I said it's a fine line.
Fine line.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I have a question about human emotions, facing it and fleeing it. So I think a lot of us are operating in these two realms. I mean, less facing it, most trying to flee and find new distraction. And we are living in the world of incredible distractions. We are using them very well, or not very well, but very much, trying to flee the emotions. And I was talking to another friend of mine, and she had an incredible change in her life by stop fleeing and start facing. And I think you understand that, and you also advocate that to people, to face emotions, face fear, desire, whatever it is going on. First question will be, what is it? How does it feel like to face it? What people can expect from it? And how to even do that? Is there a process to process it?
Super valid. Yeah, a lot of people run from their emotions because facing your emotions will bring up a lot of information and a lot of other emotions. And if we're not equipped to be able to handle these emotions, just the emotion themselves can be really frightening. I totally get that, right? It's a very intimidating place to be. I think that the first place that people should start with something like this is actually not even the emotional space. It's actually the nervous system. So when we get very worked up with emotions or situations or circumstances in our life and it's bringing up a lot, our nervous system starts going into sympathetic. It starts fight or flight, it starts reacting, right? But if we're able to actually realize that, okay, wait a second, my body is so flared up, there's so much energy, so much happening right now in my system that everything just sounds like static and noise. If I can say, okay, what's the first step in front of me? It's actually not understanding or facing the emotion, it's calming my nervous system. So you can tap into the parasympathetic nervous system and you can just relax.
Parasympathetic, like
It's like your parasympathetic is the state of calm. It's where your body goes into a calming state, not fight or flight.
Okay.
So,
and is there a way to get there?
yeah, of course. There's a lot of different ways to get it. Meditation, breath work. Sometimes to calm your body and your system can be going for a long walk. You know what I mean? Like just looking up, looking at the trees, going for a swim in the ocean, playing with your puppy. You know what I mean? Like something that is more contained space. So I wouldn't go and hang out with your best friend or like, you know, your parents or whatever is like, because there's too many variables there that might shoot you back out. Maybe you'll get into a conversation you weren't expecting. Maybe they'll share something about their life that you're, right?
You get into trance.
So you want to be in a more contained, more regulated atmosphere. That's why I generally recommend doing it alone. So like I said, you can meditate, you can do breath work, you can just like,
Going on a walk, really. I started
Breathing.
Unknowingly. I started like when I was 23, 24, and it became a thing of my life, going for a walk. And if I go to a country, for example, Canggu, Bali, it was hard because there's no way to walk.
Right.
The pedestrian ways are all blocked out.
Yeah.
But here, you have nice ways to walk. And Canggu, I realized I need this walk. It has to be part of my life. So you're saying that this is something that...
Yeah, so that's the first step, right? It's like, first of all, just like, focus on your nervous system and where that's at, and calm it down. And then look at the emotions and say, okay, so now what am I feeling? Or what was I feeling? Okay, I was feeling this. I was feeling anger. I was feeling fear. I was feeling shame. I was feeling judgment. I was feeling hurt. Whatever you're feeling, just identify them first. Because then you can look at all these things, right? There's a great book out there by Brene Brown called Atlas of the Heart. Atlas of the Heart is a book about emotions. And it outlines 87 human emotions.
Wow.
So the wonderful thing about that book is that when you can put words, language to your emotions, you don't just look at the 5 that we all feel, right? Like scared, hurt, angry, frustrated, you know what I mean? It's like, imagine having 87 emotions and emotional experiences that you can actually put names to. Because now you go, oh, okay, there's language to these emotions. What I thought was this is actually this. Okay, so now I understand it. I'm looking at it in a different lens because I didn't understand it before. I thought it was something else. It's a great book to read. But at the end of the day, even if you don't get to the 87, just name the ones that you can notice, that you can identify with, right? And then just say, okay, so now like, why? One by one, like, why is this showing up? And honestly, you might have to regulate yourself a few times. You might not be able to do this in one sitting because now you face one emotion and there's so many triggers, your body, right? Like your body keeps the score. It's an amazing book. Maybe that's a trauma reaction to a specific emotion or something going on that is really hard for you to regulate. Like it's not just about, oh, I have information and emotions are easy. Like they're not, they're information. The more information you get, the more you have to process and understand and sit with and also face yourself with. It's the hardest thing. Our identity is so tied to our emotions that anytime we challenge an emotion, we challenge who we are. Because we're not validating ourselves anymore when we're challenging an experience through an emotion that we're having. Because a lot of it's by default. Oh, well, it's because of this. It's like, okay. But like maybe we need to sit and look at that. Because if every time this happens, you have this reaction, well then let's sit with it. Like, what is going on?
That's the hardest part.
Of course it's hard, and so it takes time. Like, you know what I mean? Like I said, like I've been working through my emotions, through emotional processes since I was a child. It's just who I've been. So I have more language, more context through different experiences, especially for the things that I've been through. But it doesn't need to be, the end goal doesn't have to be, I need to understand my emotions. It's how deeply can I understand myself? The first step in front of you isn't, I'm going to sit with my emotions. Maybe the first step in front of you is realizing that you can't. Like, that's okay. This isn't a race. This isn't like you're better, you're worse. But being able to sit with yourself and be very honest as these emotions show up takes time. Now, obviously, if you're in a situation with somebody and something's going on and you're being triggered, and it's really hard to be like, I'm right. I can't just go and pet my dog now or go for a long walk. Except you can. You can just let the person know, hey, listen, I'm very triggered. Like, and even if you're not saying it calmly, if you're like, hey, listen, I'm not fucking cool with this. I'm super fucking triggered, but I don't want to say anything that's going to like offend you or make this worse because I'm about to make this a lot worse. I need to just go for an hour. But give it time. Let's just talk about this tomorrow at lunch. Because then the other person isn't held in this like, this space of like limbo of like, when are they going to talk about it? Are we going to? Is it going to hang around? But even if you go for a walk for an hour and it's not enough, come back, be like, hey, listen, a lot of things came up. I still need to sit with some more things. A lot of this might be about me, but I need more time. Let's check back in tomorrow morning. Like, to have healthy relationships and conversations, you need to honor your process. Don't worry if the other person wants to talk about it now. If you know that it's only going to make it worse, and you're trying to come at it from a compassionate space with more information, then that's fine. Maybe there's a podcast you want to listen to before you talk again, or a book you want to read, or a therapy session you want to go to, or whatever it is.
And if the other person does not understand it, he's probably not the right person for you, or at least...
I mean, I wouldn't jump to that kind of conclusion. I think that it's just a matter of like where people are and who we're with. Because sometimes people are like, well, therapy's for soft people. Like, what do you mean you're feeling all these emotions? Like, you're stronger than this. That's not how we do things, Like, so when in these moments, when these things come up, everybody's perfect. And every relationship is amazing until something shows up that triggers or creates the emotional spaces where now you have to communicate through them.
Sometimes it is relationships, and it's money, business, or scheduling, timing.
Sex,
those
right?
things.
Yeah, physical spaces.
Yeah.
Ambition, there's so many things.
You just wait for those variables to turn up to change the equation completely.
They're inevitable parts of the experience of being with somebody. But if it shows up like that and they respond in a way that you're just like, well, I'm trying to, and you're not, then again, figure out a way to calm your nervous system. If you can still have a conversation, then go for it. You don't have to get up every single time. At first, you might have to, but as you go forward, you'll be able to harmonize a little bit more. You'll be able to be more present with your emotions. You won't have to run from them anymore. You'll be able to face them. You'll be able to breathe. You'll be able to still honor the emotion and still process a conversation through them. Right? Like, it's not just about feeling happy and then having a conversation again. Emotional intelligence allows you to experience an emotion and be present with it in the moment because you've done so much work with it that you know how your body feels and how to harmonize during an interaction. You can't always just escape, but at first you might need to take a moment and pause. That's valid. It's okay if somebody else is not there or whatever, but then you can come back and say, listen, like, right now I'm having these experiences and like, I need to feel safe to be able to talk to you about these things. But if you're going to shut down and you're going to shame me and blame me or say that you don't want to, or you don't, well then like, if you're like, I don't understand, be like, well then I'm trying to like, so let's work on it so you do understand. Because if you don't, then like, this probably won't last because I'm going to shut down. I'm going to start feeling less safe. I'm going to communicate less. And then what? We're just going to hang around each other? And that's not what I want. Or maybe it is. I'm not here to judge people's relationships either. Yeah. Like, this is not a relationship to be, like, it's fine. If you're happy and you're both, like, I don't know, like, whatever it is, relationships also don't have to be attack modes. Just because you're in an argument or in a confrontation, that also doesn't mean that you both have to be yelling. It doesn't mean that you both need to feel unsafe. It doesn't mean that you need to blow up. It doesn't mean any of that. Your physical state and your emotional state is always up to you. Some things can trigger you. Not everything is under your control outside of you. But if you sit here and you start calling, like, okay, we're hanging out, right? We're good friends, right? And you start talking to me and you start putting me down or you're getting upset about something I said and you start yelling at me. Okay?
Right.
That's your experience, okay? Valid. I'm not taking anything away from someone's experience. But I don't have to get angry to know that what's happening is not okay with me. I don't need you to validate that for me. I don't need to be angry and be like, that's not okay. I can sit here and be like, Not okay with me, man. I can still process what's going on. It's not saying this is fine. It's saying it's not okay. But I don't need to validate that it's not okay through an erratic expression or an over-the-top reaction.
If I summarize, it's going to be the emotional intelligence will be a place where you refuse to engage in something volatile that is not for you. At the same time, you are not engaging with something that is not for you. At the same time, you are not fleeing the environment. You are not being completely off to this.
So it's not about disassociating and like separating and like not. It's about being mindful of the environment that you're in and the conversations that need to take place in that moment. You feel me? So it's not just being like, if you're, like you can, if somebody's like yelling and they're just being very unkind, then you can be like, I want nothing to do with this, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
That's valid. But it's not turning away from emotional conversations. It's being mindful of what that conversation needs and understanding the emotional states between the two people. You feel me? So emotional intelligence isn't being like, well, if you're not on the same wavelength as me, then fuck you. It's a level of empathy as well, right? Emotional intelligence has a lot to do with empathy because it's not just about us.
Understanding that the person is who.
To be able to, to process what the other person is going through because maybe they're triggered. Maybe they're expressing some underlying trauma. Maybe they're saying something for the first time they've never said before. Maybe they've held it all underneath and finally something happened and it triggered and you're the person that are releasing it on. Emotional intelligence is to be able to understand that other people are having their experience as well. So I don't need to run and flee. I can be very compassionate about what you're going through and how much what I'm saying might be honest, but still might hurt you. I might say things in a really loving way. But if it's a real soft spot for you and you're overreacting, I'm not gonna be like, well, forget it. I'll sit.
Yeah.
I'll be like, okay, like, I see how you're going. Like, I wanna be in a space that like, I can understand this, right? Like, what can we do to regulate your emotions a little bit or your state? Like, I didn't mean it to come across like that. I'm really sorry that it did. You never wanna say, well, I'm sorry you're reacting in this way. That is very hurtful because it doesn't take ownership. But you can say, I'm really sorry for how I said that. I didn't mean it in the way that it came across, obviously, by your reaction. So I want to be able to understand. And you can go back and be like, what did you hear me say? So I know that we're speaking the same language. It's not about fleeing all the time. It's about being compassionate and empathetic to somebody else and be able to still sit with a lot of emotion going on. Life is dense.
Other than that, you are just jaded, robotic individual with no emotions if you try to completely stay away from all kinds of emotional activities.
Well, like I said, I mean, emotions is about facing emotions, not just yours, but also
others.
Yeah, because other people's reactions are very possibly valid. Like somebody could, like, just because it doesn't feel good, somebody else could be very valid in what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody gets worked up, then that's fine. If they start like name calling and shaming and whatever, not. If you start feeling unsafe because they're like, okay. But you still need to be able to be around emotional spaces. It's not about just hiding away.
Exactly.
You can set your boundaries based on how safe and how comfortable you feel, don't get me wrong, but emotional intelligence is a big part of like how I engage with other people, not just how I engage with myself. Because the more that I understand emotions through my lens, of sitting with my emotions and facing them, then I can understand what other people are going through on a much deeper level. And so I can have a communication with them because I understand more. I'm more empathetic to what they're going through and the processes of that. So I have a better understanding of how to approach the conversation, how to speak to them in a way that will make a lot more sense or connect with them in a deeper way. Like I said, when we talked about this from the very beginning, it's also about how empathetic you can be and how you engage with other people and how that plays as a communication tool.
Okay, so one concept I want to get a clarification from you. Often people who go to the journey of self-development, understanding themselves, it often starts from some sort of difficult time, trauma, or any kind of event that happened. Works like a trigger. I think there's nothing wrong with this because a trigger has to happen for something dramatic change to take place. But you also have advocated to people that strength should not or does not come from trauma. Strength comes from where? Is it the ability to face, I guess? Is this what you...
Right. So, yeah, this is a very interesting conversation. I'm really happy you brought it up. So you hear a lot of times people saying, we go through a lot as human beings, a lot of things that are not okay. And we overcome them, the ones that do make it beyond those spaces, because with respect, some people don't.
Yep.
What ends up happening in those spaces, though, is that we validate our strength because of that thing. We create an identity around those situations or those traumas. And it's very much like, I'm strong because of that. I am who I am now because of that.
You're going back to that reference point and building a life around it.
Right. So the hard thing about that is that you can never really release those experiences because they're validating your strength. So no matter how strong you get, you're always bringing in those traumas and those situations that you actually really want to release, because in your strength, you have to play out how you became strong and what happened to make you strong. I have a different take on this. I believe that what you've been through doesn't make you stronger. It reminds you of how strong you already were. So in any situation that you have overcome, I look at it as a situation or a trauma that you went through and reminded yourself on the other side how strong you already are. Your strength got you through that. That thing didn't make you stronger. You might have gotten more wisdom and more awareness, but your strength showed through, because if you weren't strong enough before that, you wouldn't have made it. So I look at it in a very different way, because now you're able to liberate yourself from the stories of the past because you're strong, right? You will get stronger over the years by exposing yourself to your strength, not because of the things that you go through. And I think that it's a much more powerful, more liberating way to look at it, because now what you do is you can liberate yourself from all of the old trauma and stories. You don't have to bring them into your future. Yes, you're going to get wiser, you're going to go through a lot more things, and it's going to show you just how strong you really are. And I think that that's a healthier way to look at it. Because what ends up happening is, what happens when all of a sudden I can't validate where my life is right now anymore by anything that's happened to me? It's really hard for people, right? Like, my life is shit because of that. Okay? Because then if they take that thing away, their life is just shit, and they have nothing to blame. And I'm not saying that these are easy spaces to be in. You have to really make peace and understand them. You have to really conceptualize these things in a different way. You have to reframe them. But like, when you're looking back and you're like, I'm abused and I didn't do anything in my life because of everything that happened because of that, or after something happens, you can continue to evolve and to learn and to grow. You don't need that to be like, well, I'm stronger now because of it. You're like, okay, I made it through that because I'm strong as fuck. So now I can keep on building from here, because I know that no matter what happens to me, I'm strong enough. It's just going to reveal more of my strength that I might not know that I have yet.
Quite interesting. Very interesting perspective.
It shifts the emotional spaces as well. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to these, to emotional intelligence.
Like, by just going back to an event, childhood trauma and abuse, you're making it alive in a way that is not serving you the best.
So listen.
And also ignoring an important fact that you passed through that event that has latent information that you are very strong, that's why you passed through that event. Instead of focusing on that, we normally focus on, okay, that was a bad event. It wasn't that bad after all, because it reveals something powerful in you.
Well, listen, I'm not taking anything away from the fact that some things are not okay. Like, this conversation is about making everything else seem like it was okay. There's a lot of things that are not okay. I've gone through things that are not okay. I'm not validating my strength through them, but I'm also not taking anything away from the impact that it had on me. But every time that I'm able to process something in a way that is more serving, that I'm able to liberate myself from something, to heal from something, I'm showing me more of my strength. I'm not gaining more strength. I'm revealing more strength. And that's the way that I like to phrase it. That's the way that I like to look at it. Because it's not about being like, well, this is fine because I'm strong. You can be strong and be like, that wasn't okay. There's a lot of things that are not okay. And I can only imagine how much people have had to work through. This is not about unvalidating people's experiences and being like, you've always been strong enough. It's just reminding them that, like, you got through it because you were already strong. You don't need trauma to validate your strength.
It's a focus point. Where do you focus? What object do you focus? You change the focus. Instead of just focus on the trauma that happened bad, which is, but there's another focus you can put your lens on, which is your strength that passed you through.
Because then you can release it, because then you don't need it to validate how strong you are. It doesn't have to be a part of your strength story. Your strength story can be...
Already there.
Yeah, your strength story could be, no matter what happens in my life, I'm strong enough and I'll learn how much stronger I can be. It doesn't have to be, I'm strong because of this. You don't need to attach it to anything anymore. You can now just be. You can just honor yourself for how many things you've gone through, continue to show you really how strong you already are.
Okay, so we had the story where your friend, which was a great friend of yours, who understood you pretty well and gave an advice not to go to your parents and rather look for what inspires you, listen to yourself. Incredible thing. That's the kind of friends we really want. And then you listened to your intuition and your friend, which was aligned, and you took a flight. And I don't know, where did you go from there, and what did you discover, and what was your journey after that?
Yeah, so I literally went I was actually at my parents' place at the time. After the conference, I went to go spend some time with them. It was around the holidays, and so I wanted to see my parents. And I walked in the living room, and I was like, change of plans. Mm-hmm. I'm going to Thailand. I've been to Thailand many times, so I knew it. You know, it was safe for me because I knew the landscape, the food, the culture. I ended up going to Koh Samui. Mm-hmm. I got a nice resort bungalow right on the cove, right on the beach. Literally the rocks in the ocean were the sea were right in front of my space. And I just wanted my own space.
Is it in Phuket or?
Koh Samui.
Koh Samui.
Koh Samui is its own island.
Is it for a tourist area?
Kind of, but there's a lot more locals that live on that island. Okay. So it was a little bit more...
It's an island. Okay.
Yeah, it's an island.
Right, okay.
So what ended up happening was my mom was sitting with me. She's lovely. And she was I'm looking at hotels and different things, and she's helping me, and I'm sorting things out. And my parents are wonderful people. They might not agree with how I live my life in some aspects, but they're always super supportive. And they know that when I've made a choice, I've thought it through, and it's okay, so he's going to do it, so let's support whatever we can, because my parents are amazing human beings. So I ended up going to Samui, and I was okay. I was I'm going to get to Thailand. I removed all social media apps from my phone. Mm-hmm. I kept my WhatsApp for my family, my close friends, my email for my bank or emails I need to get, but I removed all socials from my phone. I had no more client projects. It was the end of the year. I made sure that they were all done. My marriage was over. I had no responsibilities to anybody and nothing to do. And I had whatever I had to go with. And I was I'll get to Samui and I'll sit on my patio and I'll meditate and I'll journal and I'll do yoga and I'll just chill. I'll smoke a bunch of weed and I'll just be with me. I have no responsibilities and I just need this for me. And so I got there that night, went to sleep, woke up in the morning, and I laid out my yoga mat, and I was sitting by the water, and my door was locked, and it's this private resort, and it was just gorgeous, super quiet day. Thailand's stunning. And I sit down.
It's warm as well, isn't it?
Oh, super warm. It was just everything. It was just lovely. It was just it was just I had my juice in the morning. I just felt really nice. And I remember sitting down on my yoga mat to meditate, and I closed my eyes. And I just felt unsafe. I felt shame. I felt judgment. I felt guilt. I felt so much intense emotion that I just within a minute, I think, I just was what the fuck was that? Now, I've always had a meditative practice since I can remember. But the last year or so in my life, there was so much going on externally that I was using meditation as a way to kind of a vipassana, where I would just quiet the noise and just center and just find some peace.
Then go back to the trance again.
Because everything else was, you know what I mean? So I needed somewhere. Mm-hmm. But this time, which I've done many times before, but this time was the first time after about a year or so where I was okay, I'm going to really sit and see what shows up. People use meditation sometimes as a calming, as a peaceful space, but also as escape. And I'm very mindful about when I'm using it and how I'm using my meditation practice, because there's a lot of meditation practice out there. And they don't all involve sitting down, crossing your legs, and closing your eyes. But for this specific story, I sat down and I was okay, I'm just going to close my eyes and see what shows up purposefully. And everything showed up all at once. And I was okay. I was so going back to what I was saying before, the step in front of us. I thought that the first step in front of me was to get to Thailand, sit down and meditate and begin this journey. But it turns out that my first step was getting to Thailand, sitting down to meditate, and realizing that I couldn't. And that's kind of where things started, because then I'm like, okay, well, what's going on?
What's the difference?
The difference is, I thought that I was gonna like get into meditation, find the clarity that I needed, like be at peace, right? Like we think the meditation is gonna take us to a peaceful place. So I thought that like I just need to get to Thailand and just find my peace. But actually I got to Thailand and in meditation, I found my chaos. And so it wasn't the peace, it was like what showed up for me. And I wasn't expecting anything so much really, but I didn't expect what showed up. That's for sure. I thought it'd be a lot more peaceful because I had no responsibilities anymore. It was just me. And then so I looked at everything and I'm like, okay, like, so why am I feeling guilty? What am I feeling guilty about? There's nobody around. Where's this coming from? Like, why do I feel scared? Why do I feel unsafe? Like, what's going on? Like, I have a fully regulated environment. I have no responsibilities. Nobody is out here to like, I'm just alone. Like, I don't understand. Like, only 2 people in the world know where I'm even at. What's happening? And so I sat with every one of those things and I had to challenge each one of those things. You know, one of the things was my whole life was built on personal or professional development. I really had a hard time just existing. And I was like, why can't I just exist? Why do I feel so guilty not doing anything? And it's funny because in my mind, doing nothing was meditating, journaling, doing yoga, going for walks, going swimming. It's like even doing nothing was doing so many things because otherwise I wasn't personally growing, you know? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to challenge everything about myself right now because Albert Einstein says that you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it, which means you have to neurologically rewire your brain. So I was like, okay, well, I know where all this goes and all these choices go, so I have to go the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And so that's what I did. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to being lazy, quote unquote, to just do nothing, not feel like I'm being lazy, and be okay with just existing. And that took time. And it wasn't like for a week or two. I was like, I'm committing the rest of my life to this because I know where all that goes and I don't want any of it anymore. There's no part of who I was that I want to bring into this new rewiring phase. And so I started isolating like my emotional spaces. And I was like, okay, so let me do that. And then I got to a place where I was able to just exist. And then there was other things like, why do I feel guilty? Oh, well, because I'm in this really wonderful bungalow in this private resort and I love my comforts. But my whole life growing up, I was told like, oh yeah, of course Yossi's ordering the most expensive thing. And oh, of course he's buying this clothing. And of course he's flying first class. And of course, my comforts don't have anything to do with money. I'm using those as extreme examples. But like, I was like, oh, my comforts, I've been made to feel guilty. Okay. So I need to figure out a way to just embrace this. How can I reframe this experience right now, right? And nobody else is there judging me. This is all internal, like, wiring. And so I went one by one with everything that showed up. The emotional spaces too. It wasn't like, oh, I figured it out. Some of these things took weeks, some of them took months, some of them took way longer. Because I had to dive into the emotional spaces, face them to even be able to move through them, right? Like, you don't just move through it because you have an awareness. Sometimes you're just like, oh, fuck. That's a lot for me now to even just face this. I can't even process this yet. I can't even process the fact that I'm facing this. Like, so everyone has their own time and their own pace, you know what I mean? And you know, emotional intelligence isn't about not feeling emotions. It's not getting to a place where you're always happy. It's getting to a place where you can understand your emotions from an information standpoint, where you can regulate faster, where you can understand faster, where you can feel deeply for the information and the experience that it provides without it affecting who you are, how you think, how you move, how you react. You're way more conscious and way more in control of those things. And I think that for me was, you know, massive. And so I went through a lot of those things. I thought I'd be away for 3 months. 3 months turned to 6 months, turned to 8 months, turned into a year. I traveled around. I had a lot of life experiences happening during those times. But I was able to really sit with the depth of these emotions so much. And sometimes it would be lying in bed, cuddling up in a ball, and not escaping from the emotion, but really sitting or lying with them. And being like, okay, like I need to process my nervous system in this emotion first. Because if I can't get past how my nervous system gets triggered by this emotion, I'll never be able to get to this emotion is trying to provide for me. So a lot of the times when I'm facing big emotions, I'm really trying to calm my nervous system. Because then I can feel safe and comfortable in whatever that emotion needs to show me. Because otherwise it's going to show me stuff that I won't be able to fucking process, because my emotion, like my nervous system's already skyrocketed. It's through the roof. I can't add any more to it. So I'm either going to shut down, have a nervous fucking breakdown, and then not be able to rebound because I'll be too afraid to go back to that place. So I'm very mindful of how the mind, the body, and the heart all work together, the soul as well, through these meditative practices. And that's really what I do. When I work with people, I work on 4 pillars. I work on heart, body, mind, emotion. So heart is emotional intelligence, body is nervous system, mind is neural rewiring, and soul is meditative practices. These are the 4 key pillars of self. And we have so many emotional spaces that are connected to all of these things. They're not separate.
What do you think why we are not even taught these things? Because sounds like being taught about how to walk or how to lift. We don't want to lift something that is too heavy. Lift based on balance. A few other things that we learn, how to eat, how to go to toilets and everything. These things are taught because they are physical parts of our lives and we have to know it. That other thing is actually more dominant, mental reality. Because what goes in your mind dribbles down to everything you do, and they have tremendous impacts. But we are not taught. So there are conspiracy theories. I don't want to go into that. You don't want to go into that either. Because it's like that we are somehow processed just to survive and serve. And because you only get into those kind of things, you start understanding your needs and positioning and how to actually calm yourself down, not get under the anxiety. Because anxiety, you need this anxiety to for the puppeteer needs the anxiety so that they can pull the strings of the puppet. And is this something that you have ever thought of? Because sometimes it just gets me that how could we not know? How could we not talk about? Why do I have to individually find the library and figure out the codes?
So I think that it's a really wonderful question, and I'm sure there's a lot of perspectives on this. For a long time, we were focusing on EQ. How smart we are, right? Tangibly how smart we are. We go to school, how much information can you absorb and learn? How much can you memorize? Get out into the workforce, become, you know what I mean? Like wealthy or be of service in these ways so you can, you know what I mean? Like building, like, you know what I mean? And that's how a lot of people were at one point in time trained to find their value and how smart they are. You know, like you hear these things like, you know, if you're not the smartest person in the room, then you should leave the room. Now, I get that that sounds good, but if the smartest person kept on leaving every room, then nobody would ever stay in any room. Exactly. Because then once the smartest person left, it would be the next smartest person, and then he'd be the smartest person, so he would leave. So we are like, if I'm the smartest person, I'm going to leave, but then if we're not, we want the smarter people to stay in the room because it's going to benefit us. So it actually doesn't make any sense, these things that people talk about. Yeah, it's a paradox. So ultimately what it comes down to these human skills, right? We have hard skills, EQ, and soft skills. Or sorry, IQ. Sorry, I said EQ before, but I meant IQ. Sorry. So IQ is hard skills, EQ is soft skills. But EQ is just human skills. Soft skills are human skills. So if you can get into a room and you know how to connect with the people in there, I don't care how smart people are. There's some wonderfully smart people out there that are really not connected with their emotions and really struggle with these things, and I work with them.
Yeah.
So if we can break this down to human connection, well, now you walk in a room and you go, if you're able to connect with people in a room and you're able to create value and people are able to receive value from you, then stay in that room. If not, then you're in the wrong room. Then you should go to another room and go connect with other people, right? Like, we need to be looking at these things because we have these conversational biases, things that sound so noble, but when you break it down, make no sense. So I think that when we talk about emotions, especially right now, it's super important in this age of AI, the more that we're automating, the more that AI is taking over, the more people are like, well, I'm not a robot, and I'm not AI, I'm a human being. They're connecting with the humanity more.
Huge.
And so that's why it's such an important conversation now, and that's why it's so important to be able to tap into, because now people are connecting, they have more automations, more time to themselves if they're not hustling like crazy, but ultimately it's going to end up making space where everything's going to be automated and sorted out, where it's like you're going to have more time to sit with yourself and the human that you are, and that's an emotional space, and that's really hard because the first time in a long time, people won't be able to mask or hide themselves behind work and behind all these things because now they're going to have the time to sit with themselves and figure out what that looks like. And that's not easy, but it's important.
Okay, so it was really nice talking to you, Yoshi. It was great understanding. You have challenged some of the areas that we take them for granted or just listen and we don't reflect on those. So it's just extremely powerful conversation. And if you want to have a tip that's people who want to do self-development, one understanding I had that you took a trip, you travel from a place, went to somewhere else, and somehow loads of things started to change for you. If you think this could be something like that people can do or something similar if they want to get into self-understanding, self-reflection and development, what will be your tip on that?
So listen, everyone's at a different place in their life. Not everybody can get on a plane and go somewhere, right? Like that's obvious. So I'm not telling people that they have to get on a plane to find themselves. You don't have to go to retreats or do anything that's out of your capability. I don't want anyone to think that they can't tap into who they are because of where they are. You can do this anywhere. There's this saying that, you build a kingdom one brick at a time. And I think that's really important for people to be aware of. The race isn't to get to really anywhere faster than you can get there, right? So if you're able to find moments in your day where you can carve out, if you need to face some things, then just carve that out. Sit with an emotion on your own, in your bedroom, in the shower, in the park, like on the beach, wherever's, you know what I mean? Just anything that's uncomfortable, anything that your soul, that your space, who you are is telling you that you really need to start challenging and sit with, just sit with one thing first. Regulate your nervous system when it shows up to get to a place where you can actually look at the emotion without having your identity get triggered, you know what I mean? To feel comfortable, to be like, okay, like, I'm about to challenge something right now because I'm about to sit with something that I haven't. Take a minute.
Start this way.
Take 5 minutes,
Yep.
Take 10 minutes, take an hour, take a day, take a week, take a month. Like slowly build up based on what is the next available step in front of you. Because every little thing is going to stack, right? It's like meditations, for example, right? Like meditation doesn't have to be your thing. It really helps for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of different meditations out there, but ultimately it's like if you can't meditate for an hour, then you start with 30 seconds. Exactly. You start with 5 seconds. You start with closing your eyes and taking one breath. And then eventually you feel comfortable with that. And then you can move forward to 2 breaths, 30 seconds, a minute, 10 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 20-day Vipassana. Like, it's going to take your time. We're all at different places. Our nervous systems are different places. Our understandings, our connections to ourselves are different. So just carve out where you can with what you have. And then just nice and easy based on what's available to you. And yeah, you're going to challenge yourself and it's going to be uncomfortable. Sit in that discomfort as much as you can, right? If there's some big things in your life that are really hard, then start with the easier things. The easier things might still be hard, but sit with the things that are a little bit more manageable for you to begin with. You don't have to dive right in and say, okay, I'm going to take a look at all this generational trauma or this sexual abuse that I had or whatever. Just sit with something.
And build on top of that.
Just open up the space for that. Okay, well, why is this taking me so long to sit with? Sit with yourself and say, I'm going to start the journey of understanding this trigger. Breathe, and then get up. You can sit with it another time. Like, sit and just make the statement if that's what you need. To get up and be like, whoa, that took a lot for me. To even address the fact that I'm going to sit with this was huge for me. Amazing. That could be enough. Because if progressively you want to work at it, then you'll know maybe you want to sit with it later on in the day. Maybe you need another week to just let that moment process in your emotional spaces so you can sit back down and be like, wow, sitting with that took a lot out of me. That's so interesting. Okay, I'm ready to sit with it again. What else is going to show up today? Right? Some people need that. Some people can go all in. But it's not about other people and how other people are handling things and what they're doing. Like, where are you? We've all had different things in our lives. Like, breathe, take your time, focus, but be very present with yourself as they show up. Regulate your nervous system, be very mindful of what's happening inside to be able to address the things one breath at a time, man.
But just start.
Just start, man. Just start.
Great, Yoshi. It was really nice talking to you. It was incredible.
Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you. Cheers. Let's shoot it down.